Some years ago, Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking with Bill Moyer, and the topic of faith and reason, or faith in science, came up. Let's see how Dr. Tyson handled the topic, and I'll react.
People who make this case that was the beginning and that there had to be something that provoked the beginning, do you give them an A at least for trying to reconcile faith and reason?
I don't think they're reconcilable.
What do you mean?
Well, so let me say that differently. All efforts that have been invested by brilliant people of the past have failed at that exercise. They just fail. And so the track record is so poor that going forward, I have essentially zero confidence, near zero confidence that there will be fruitful things to emerge from the effort to reconcile them.
Well, if he is talking about using scripture to give us accurate information on modern science, I agree. The Bible employs ancient science, not modern science. Simply, the Bible is not a modern science textbook. Let's see where he goes from there.
So, for example, if you knew nothing about science and you read, say, the Bible, the Old Testament, which in Genesis is an account of nature. That's what that is.
So he calls early Genesis an account of nature, and here I think he makes the same mistake that young Earth creationists make. He seems to assert that early Genesis is meant as a piece of historical narrative akin to modern standards, but it's not. It's an ancient theological narrative. And this error sets up a misguided framing of the whole issue. Let's continue.
And I said to you, give me your description of the natural world based only on this. You would say the world was created in 6 days and that stars are just little points of light, much lesser than the sun. And in fact, they can fall out of the sky, right? Because that's what happens during the Revelation. One of the signs that the second coming is that the stars will fall out of the sky and land on Earth.
Well, yes, if you assume that early Genesis was historical narrative, and if you didn't know any science, and you believed your faulty interpretation of Scripture, you would hold those views about the world. But those are the views that the ancients held. That was the science of their day, and that is why they are in the Bible. And by the way, the genre of Revelation is probably something akin to ancient apocalyptic literature, and therefore not literal either. But let's go on.
To even write that means you don't know what those things are. You have no concept of what the actual universe is. So everybody who tried to make proclamations about the physical universe based on Bible passages got the wrong answer.
Yes, agreed. Don't use the Bible to learn about science. Use your God-given talents. God did not teach the ancients modern science because it was not his primary concern. It would have confused them. And anyway, we can learn science on our own without Scripture.
So what happened was when science discovers things and you want to stay religious or you want to continue to believe that the Bible is unerring, what you would do is you would say, well, let me go back to the Bible and reinterpret it. Then you'd say things like, oh, they didn't really mean that literally. They meant that figuratively. So this whole sort of reinterpretation of how figurative the poetic passages of the Bible are came after science showed that this is not how things unfolded.
Okay, this is important because he makes an inference, perhaps, that we are just saying that those passages are figurative because our old interpretation was proven wrong. We've been caught in error and are just trying to pivot to save our faith. Well, I have 3 responses. First, using our knowledge of physical reality to inform us on whether a difficult passage is literal or figurative is fine. Second, lots of Christians thought that early Genesis and Revelation were figurative long before science weighed in on the issue. And third, we used science, including archaeological science, to help us determine that early Genesis was not intended as historical narrative. Starting in the mid-1800s, our knowledge of the creation and flood myths and other literature of the ancient Near East revolutionized our understanding of difficult portions of Scripture.
And so the educated religious people are perfectly fine with that. It's the fundamentalists who want to say that the Bible is the literal truth of God and want to see the Bible as a science textbook who are knocking on the science doors of the schools trying to put that content in the science. Enlightened religious people are not behaving that way. They're saying, yes, science is cool, we're good with that, and use the Bible to get your spiritual enlightenment and your emotional fulfillment.
Now he narrows his critique to fundamentalists, who I have my own issues with as well. I do want to point out, though, that just because the Bible uses ancient science doesn't mean it isn't inspired by God. God spoke quite reasonably within the context of the place and time of the human authors of Scripture.